Okay, so it's actually really good that this is a number input because one of the things most people won't do this, but if you have loads of people using your code, then some people don't they don't use the program how you want them to use it. And so, for instance, in this instance, someone could, if we were using calories burnt to do some sort of calculation, they could type in ABC, right? And then it gets ABC and it thinks it's a number and then it tries to times ABC by something and it doesn't work and then it causes a bug. But because we have this number input here, we can't do that. Like it won't even let me if I try and break it. I'm typing normal letters here. So
Yeah.
that's really great. And I think everything here is just working pretty much exactly as I expect. I'm trying to think of ways I could even break this. If I leave... Okay. So there's one thing that I didn't specify this, but that's one thing. If I have one entry and the other's not there, then it just doesn't say anything. But I guess that makes sense.
I did it
It
so that it
yeah yeah
it had to be both in order for
yeah
it to.
that makes
Yeah,
total
I guess
sense.
that would have been good to kick like an error message.
Yeah. So we can look into that in the future. And I think there's a really easy way in JavaScript to do that. And this isn't very professional. We wouldn't probably put this in major like main code. But for instance, if name length dot zero, I'm just gonna format this code a bit. Then else we can do, I think it's just called alert. Then I can say both fields must have a value. Save that, and then we're not alert. If quantity dot value, I'm just checking this. That should have worked. I thought.
That's one of the other things I was thinking.
Go here. Okay, that's not important anyway. But we could basically set up this. I think it is just called alert. It basically just gives you this pop-up box that says,
Yeah.
whatever. But that's something we can look into in the future. So let's actually look at the code here. So I guess I'll start with the very sort of basic. So first of all, commenting code. Obviously, I understand that commenting code is super useful because you want to be able to look back at your code, right? And it's
Yeah.
but in terms of when we're using a system like Git, we actually keep a comprehensive log of everything that's there, so we can see these different versions, right? So if you're committing frequently enough, and then basically all of this commented code should be in a previous version, and we shouldn't need to keep it lying around.
Okay.
So as we move forwards with Git, that's something to bear in mind. But for now, I'll just get rid
That
of
was
this.
I was trying to refactor it,
Yeah.
and I wasn't able to pull that off.
Okay, and seems like name and calories aren't. Where is this? Seems like this isn't used. Because I see. Because once again we're having this this scope issue. We think we had this issue last time. It's the case of we have a name here, and then we also define something else called name, right? So we're basically overriding it, and so we can. I think I remember.
So I got a question about that. So
Yeah.
both of these name declarations are exactly the same, but I just didn't know, is it sufficient to put it in a global scope, or do I need to dictate those specifically inside of each function? I wasn't sure which
Okay,
one.
so yeah, so let's explain. Let's go into scope here a little bit. So if I declare something globally, right? So I'm gonna put an indent here to make things a little more obvious, right? Like when I'm declaring something globally here, anything lower down, anything more specific can use it, right? So if I have some code here, right, I'm just going to use a load of these to indicate brackets. If I declare, right, I can use A here, I can use A here, I can use A anywhere, right? I can use it at any point inside of the construct. But if I do it the other way around, if I put, I can't use B here, it's not recognized, or here, or, sorry, I'll zoom in, I know sometimes it's not very visible. Yeah, so basically, we want to make things, at all times, we want to make them as specific as possible.
Okay.
So if we don't think there's any, like, if we'll never use A in this scope, and we're only ever going to use it in this scope, then we should just put A here.
Got it.
But there's also the factor of currently maybe we have A here now, but in the future we know we're going to have other functions like down here and over here where we're also using A. So then we could put A at this level because we know that A is going to be used in all three of these, right?
Got it.
Okay, cool. So I remember last time actually we redeclared these because there might have been some issue with it not getting the updated value. So if I delete these, I'm just wondering if this will still work. I think it should still work, but
I think so, but I'm not sure.
yes. So let's just quickly check that. Should I just do this? Okay, so let's see. So that's here and refresh this. Type A. Yes, so it's having that same issue here where, so in this case it does make sense to declare them here, but because we're declaring them at this level, we shouldn't declare them at this level as well, because if they're not being used here, they're only
It's
being,
redundant.
yeah.
Okay.
And this is maybe too specific to get into now, but I think it's kind of good to know right at the start. So this var, as you can see in my my IDE, it's saying that there's a warning with it. So the way JavaScript used to work is we used to just have vars for everything. We used to and vars were used globally, but now we have something called let and const. I don't know if these have been covered.
Oh, I have learned that actually. I went through those for sure.
Yeah.
So I have been explained
Yeah.
let and const as the variables.
So in my opinion, if we're
I
not
think I
changing
was
things,
just
it just
being
makes
lazy.
sense to get in the habit of using let and const, because in the future you should
Okay.
make the change. Again, this is like code style stuff, which isn't super important right at the start, but it's just building good habits, and then you wouldn't have to worry about it later on. So if things aren't changing, we call them const. So basically, now again, I'm not 100 million% sure about how const and let work specifically, but I think basically if we have const A, I can actually just wrap up a JavaScript console for this. So if I have let x equals 10, I can do let x equals 15, right? It lets me do that. Whereas if I have const y 10, I can't do const y 15 because but I think I can do y plus plus. No, I can't. Okay, so
Okay,
it works differently. Like so when I declare this a constant, it's always that value. I can't change it.
Okay.
In in Java, for instance, you can still change the value. You just can't reassign it, but it's permanent. Okay, cool. Back to this. Okay, so that's fine. Yeah, the e.prevent default stuff, that seems to be cleared up really well. So I did do some looking. I did look into this briefly. I still don't completely understand why it's happening, but
Yeah.
each
I looked into it a bit too, but from what I can gather is because I used a form.
Yes,
tag.
this is what. Yes. This is what I thought as well. I didn't actually
Yeah.
specifically check, but yes, form. Okay, so wait, this just says form box. I don't know if that will make a difference, but maybe
Yeah,
it's to do with
that-
container or something. But anyway, so yeah, basically the default action is to refresh the page once we hit enter. So we're just saying we don't want to do that, which I think you probably figured out as well.
Right.
Okay, so let's have a look at this. So name.value.length is greater than 0. Yeah, that's fine. Quantity. What is quantity?
Where are you at? Okay, got it. Never mind.
Quantity is actually not being used. So I think what this is.
Quantity was so that was in the global scope under get element by ID. That's where the calories input is. But
Yeah.
I actually have that now under where it says prevent default.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But so now it's called. So this is another thing, right? Is if we've got this element called quantity, we should make this correlate to it, because otherwise we're going to start running. Like, I think a lot of problems people have with code is not that the code itself is difficult. It's just that the problem is not expressed in a simple way. And because of that, even simple problems can become really, really, really complicated. And so if we're calling this quantity and this calories, if we were to go further on and we keep using quantity and calories separately, we're gonna run into a bug eventually. So what we should either do is this should be called calories. Alternatively, this should be called, we could call this quantities,
whatever
or
it is.
quantity value. Because this is referring to, oh no, this is actually the getting, yeah, no. So this will be quantity element.
Got it. Input.
And then this needs to be. So, because right now, here's a bug I could find. So right now, if I actually refresh this, if I put in 0 here, wait. Oh, it has to be greater than 0, okay. That will always be false, it seems like. But if this was referring to something else, for instance, quantity equals 10, quantity equal, 1 second. Then when I run this, sorry, my computer's pretty slow when I'm screen sharing and recording at the same time. Calories burnt 0. There we go. See, we can now see that calorie 0 has actually been added because the quantity value is actually coming from this and it's not coming from this. This value is referred to as calories. Whereas if we change this to calories dot value, save. Okay. And then we have this as 0. It no longer works because it's reading the actual value. So if I just change that to 1, then it will work. Okay, cool. So that's one thing, is to keep variable names consistent, and that will just make things super easy. I think there's a number of these like tricks that I think this one's pretty understandable, but some of them might not be so understandable. But if you follow these practices, it makes things really easy for you, and eventually, as you sort of build your knowledge, you understand why they're done.
Got it.
Okay, cool. So for Lee, again, I would call this, instead of Lee, I would call this like name exercise item,
list or
something like that, right?
item.
Yeah. Then const, I think I should be able to, unless, 1 second, let me check that. 2, 3, 2, 3. Yes, perfect. So now this just kind of makes a little bit more sense. We're creating a new element, that's perfect, this is perfect. Append, and then name.value equals, and then Lee2 again. Oh, I see. So that's not. Oh, okay. It's
Yeah, but the thing about that I looked at too, Li2 is neither of them have a ID on it, so I don't know if I'm actually accessing the correct. I know that naming was very weird.
Yeah, and I see what's happening here is I didn't think about this until I've just seen this, but we have 2 different lists, right?
Right.
So it's just coincidence. Well, it's not coincidence, it's intentional. But when we add an item, we're not adding one exercise, we're actually adding an exercise name and an exercise like calorie value. And it's just, we've programmed it so they coincidentally align, but we've actually got 2 completely separate lists. So when we clear the list, we have to clear 2 lists.
Yeah.
So what I think would work better is instead we have one value, which we do this, right? So plus calorie value, and then we can get rid of this, and then